Okay, so now for the second half of The Wife of Bath, you will remember that when we left off in our story, the knight had just saved his life by announcing that what a woman wants most is sovereignty, power over her husband. She wants to be the one who has the whip, or is the whip, as the Wife of Bath says. She wants to be the one that wears the pants. And now we will find out what exactly the old woman is going to require of the knight. And I am going to use a different old lady voice because she has a lot more to say. And you'll get tired of it. In all the court, not one that shook her head or contradicted what the knight had said. Maid, wife, and widow cried, "He saved his life." And on the word, up started the old wife, the old lady, the one the knight saw sitting on the green, and cried, "Your mercy, sovereign lady, queen, before the court disperses, do me right. 'Twas I who taught this answer to the knight, for which he swore and pledged his honor to it, that the first thing I ask of him he'd do it, so far as it should lie within his might. Before this court I ask you then, Sir Knight, to keep your word and take me for your wife. For well you know that I have saved your life. If this be false, deny it on your sword." "Alas," he said, "old lady, by the Lord, I know indeed that such was my behest, but for God's love, think of a new request. Take all my goods, but leave my body free." "A curse on us," said she, "if I agree. I may be foul, I may be poor and old, yet will not choose to be for all the gold that's bedded in the earth or lies above, less than your wife, nay, than your very love." "My love," said he, "my heaven, my damnation! Alas, that any of my race and station should ever make so foul a misalliance." Yet in the end, his pleading and defiance all went for nothing. He was forced to wed. He takes his ancient wife and goes to bed. Now, peradventure, some may well suspect a lack of care in me, since I neglect to tell of the rejoicing and display made at the feast upon their wedding day. But I have but a short answer to let fall. I say there was no joy or feast at all, nothing but heaviness of heart and sorrow. He married her in private on the morrow, and all day long stayed hidden like an owl. It was such torture that his wife looked so foul. So I love the knight's response here. He does not even try to be graceful about how horrified he is that the old lady would ask to be his wife. He says, "Oh, by the Lord, think of a new request. Take all my goods, but leave my body free." He wants out. And she says, "No, no, no, you promised." And then he goes on to very explicitly say that his station in life would make this a foul misalliance. He says, "I deserve better than you." Perhaps forgetting that he is only alive because of her, maybe. I also like the line, "He was forced to wed. He takes his ancient wife and goes to bed." So now begins the honeymoon night. Let's see how that goes. Great was the anguish churning in his head when he and she were piloted to bed. He wallowed back and forth in desperate style. His ancient wife lay smiling all the while. At last she said, "Bless us! Is this, my dear, how knights and wives get on together here? Are these the laws of good King Arthur's house? Are all of his knights so contemptuous? I am your own beloved and your wife, and I am she indeed that saved your life. And certainly I never did you wrong. Then why this first of nights so sad a song? You're carrying on as if you were half-witted. Say, for God's love, what sin have I committed? I'll put things right if you will tell me how." And so she says, "Aren't you going to treat me the way a husband is supposed to treat a wife on this first of nights?" But then she offers him, "Tell me what I've done wrong, and I'll fix it if I could." "Put right?" the knight cried. "That never can be now. Nothing can ever be put right again. You're so old and so abominably plain, so poor to start with, so low bred to follow. It's little wonder if I twist and wallow. God, that my heart would burst within my breast. Is that, she said, the cause of your unrest? Yes, certainly, he said. And can you wonder? So he's got these complaints. You're old, you're plain, which plain here means ugly, not beautiful. And you're poor and low bred. So this is where that gentility comes in that you read about or heard about in the PowerPoint. He's saying that she was born to a low class family. And so he's saying, I am an upper class man and you are a low born, meaning that you are low class. And so this is going to begin her problem. Is that, said she, the cause of your unrest? Yes, certainly, he said. And can you wonder? I could set right what you suppose a blunder. This is her talking again. That's if I cared to in a day or two, if I were shown more courtesy by you. Just now, she said, you spoke of gentle birth. Such descends from ancient wealth and worth. If that's the claim you make for gentlemen, such arrogance is hardly worth a hen. Whoever loves to work for virtuous ends, public and private, and who most intends to do what deeds of gentleness he can, take him to be the greatest gentleman. Christ wills we take our gentleness from him, not from a wealth of ancestry long dim, though they bequeath their whole establishment by which we claim to be of high descent. There she is, the knight and the old lady. Our fathers cannot make us a bequest of all those virtues that became them best, and earned for them the name of gentlemen, but bade us follow them as best we can. So she makes the argument here. She's saying that you cannot inherit behaviors. Fathers can try to teach sons how to behave, but not all do. Thus, the wise poet of the Florentines, Dante by name, has written these lines. For such is the opinion Dante launches. Seldom arises by these slender branches, talking about a family tree, prowess of men, for it is God no less wills us to claim of him our gentleness. For our parents, nothing can we claim save temporal things, and these may hurt and maim. So he's saying only money and possessions get passed down, and having too much money and possessions might actually hurt your chances of becoming gentle. But everyone knows this as well as I, for if gentility were implanted by the natural course of lineage down the line, public or private, could it cease to shine in doing the fair work of the gentle deed? No vice or villainy could then bear seed. Take fire and carry it into the darkest house between this kingdom and the Caucasus, which is mountains, and shut the doors on it and leave it there. It will burn on, and it will burn as fair as if 10,000 men were there to see. For fire will keep its nature and degree, I can assure you, until it dies. But gentleness, as you will recognize, is not annexed in nature to possessions. Men fail in living up to their professions, but fire never ceases to be fire. God knows you'll often find, if you inquire, some lording full of villainy and shame. If you would be esteemed for the mere name of having been by birth a gentleman and stemming from some virtuous noble clan, and do not live yourself by gentle deed, or take your father's noble code and creed, you are no gentleman, though duke or earl. Vice and bad manners are what make one a churl. So again, she is pointing out that there are plenty of people whose fathers were of noble birth, but they themselves are not. It is your deeds that make you a gentleman, that make one a gentleman, not birth. And that plenty of upper class people are churls, which is a great word to mean that they are not virtuous, that they are villainous and immoral. After all, this is a story about a knight who is of the upper class who raped a woman. So the knight himself lives up to her description here. Gentility is only the renown for bounty that your fathers handed down, quite foreign to your person, not your own. Gentility must come from God alone. She's really driving that point home. That we are gentle comes to us by grace, and by no means is it bequeathed with place. Reflect how noble, says Valerius, was Tullius, surnamed Hostilius, who rose from poverty to nobleness. And read Boethius, Seneca no less. Thus they express themselves and are agreed. Gentle is he that does a gentle deed. And therefore, my dear husband, I conclude that even if my ancestors were rude, yet God on high, and so I hope he will, can grant me grace to live in virtue still. A gentle woman only when beginning to live in virtue and to shrink from sinning. And thus she concludes her first argument, which is about him accusing her of being low-born and low class, with all these allusions to Roman philosophers and Greek philosophers, saying, one, really smart people back me up here. And two, this is also the wife of Bath, making sure that in her story she backs up her points so that the pardoner, whom she's arguing with the most strongly, knows how smart she is. Now she moves on to her second argument against poverty and why her poverty should not be a problem for him. As for my poverty, which you reprove, Almighty God himself, in whom we move, believe, and have our being, chose a life of poverty. And every man or wife, nay, every child, can see that our heavenly King would never stoop to choose a shameful thing. So she's saying there's no shame in being poor because clearly Christ was born in a manger. He was born manger to a poor carpenter. And she's saying, so if poverty was bad, why would Jesus himself choose to be born into a poor family? She carries on. There's no shame in poverty if the heart is gay, as Seneca and all the learned say. He who accepts his poverty unhurt, I'd say is rich, although he lacked a shirt. But truly poor are they who whine and fret and covet what they cannot hope to get. And he that having nothing covets not is rich, though you may think he is a sot. So here she has a similar backwards argument or confusing argument as the one that she gives about nobility. She says that the truly poor are those who covet, and those who don't covet, even if they're poor, are truly rich. And so this is a point that basically means that the knight himself could be poor because he's not happy with what he has. Whereas if she's happy with what she has and doesn't want for more, then she herself is truly rich. The poverty argument continues. True poverty can find a song to sing. Juvenal says a pleasant little thing. The poor can dance and sing in the relief of having nothing that will tempt a thief. Though it be hateful, poverty is good, a great incentive to a livelihood, and a great capacity for wisdom if accepted patiently. Poverty is, though wanting in estate, a kind of wealth that none calumniate, which means criticize with false statements. Poverty often, when the heart is lowly, brings one to God and teaches what is holy. gives knowledge of oneself an even lens, a glass by which to see one's truest friends. And since it is no offense, let me be plain. Do not rebuke my poverty again. She has a lot to say about poverty here. She says that the poor can dance and sing in the relief of having nothing that will tempt a thief. You don't have to worry about being robbed if you have nothing. It's a great incentive to livelihood. It can teach you the value of hard work. You can learn wisdom if you patiently accept your poverty instead of complaining. It could bring you closer to God. It could also give you a glass by which to see your truest friends. This point has to do with the fact that when you're wealthy, you always have to wonder if people are really there for you or there for your money. But she's saying if you're poor, you know that your friends are really your friends and they like you for you and not for what you have. So that takes care of his second argument about her being poor. Lastly, sir, you taxed me with being old. Yet, even if you never had been told by ancient books, you gentlemen engage yourselves in honor to respect old age. To call an old man father shows good breeding, and this could be supported from my reading. You say I'm old and fouler than a fen? You need not fear to be a cuckold then. Filth and old age, I'm sure you will agree, are powerful wardens over chastity. Nevertheless, well knowing your delights, I shall fulfill your worldly appetites. So if you look over here, it says a cuckold is a husband whose wife is unfaithful. She says, hey, if I'm old and ugly, you don't have to worry about me cheating on you. Nobody's going to look my direction. She says, oh, but don't worry. I still know how to take care of you in bed. So now that she has defended herself against being lowborn, poor, and old and ugly, she says, okay, here's what it comes down to, hubby. I will give you two choices. Pay close attention. You have two choices. Which one will you try? To have me old and ugly till I die, but still a true, loyal, and humble wife that will never displease you all her life? Or would you rather I were young and pretty and chance what happens and chance your arm what happens in a city where your friends will visit you because of me? Yes, and in other places too, maybe. Which would you have? The choice is all your own. So now she's saying you have two options. Which one is it going to be? Do you want to have me be old and ugly, but faithful? Or do you want me to be young and pretty, but I'll cheat? She says, what might happen in a city where your friends will visit you because of me? And so, guys, I will give you a chance to think about which would you choose? Which would you rather have? An unattractive woman who's faithful to you, or a young and pretty woman who cheats on you? That's what this knight has got to decide. The knight thought long, and with a piteous groan, at last he said, with all the care in life, my lady and my love, my dearest wife, I leave the matter to your wise decision. You make the choice yourself. For the provision of what may be agreeable and rich in honor to us both, I don't care which. Whatever pleases you suffices me. And have I won the mastery? said she, since I'm to choose and rule as I think fit? Remember that mastery over her husband as over her lover was what the answer to the question was. Mastery, sovereignty. Certainly, wife, he answered her. That's it. Kiss me, she cried. No quarrels. On my oath and word of honor, you shall find me both. That is to say, both fair and faithful as a wife. May I go howling mad and take my life unless I prove to be as good and true as ever wife was since the world was new. And if tomorrow, when the sun's above, I seem less fair than any lady love, than any queen or empress, east or west, do with my life and death as you think best. Cast up the curtain, husband, look at me. And when indeed the knight had looked to see, lo, she was young and lovely and rich in charms. In ecstasy, he caught her in his arms. His heart went bathing in a bath of blisses and melted in 100,000 kisses. And she responded in the fullest measure with all that could delight or give him pleasure. So they lived ever after to the end in perfect bliss. And may Christ Jesus send us husbands, meek and young and fresh in bed, and grace to overbid them when we wed. And Jesu, hear my prayer, cut short the lives of those that won't be governed by their wives, and all old angry niggards of their pence, and God send them soon a very pestilence. I want to point out to you that this word, which it does not, oh, here it is, controlling misers. This word, which I always hate to read because, it looks like that other N word, actually does not have any attachment to that N word. It means a controlling miser, and they come from completely different word origins, even though they sound so very much alike that I wish our translation would change that word and not put it in there. Anyway, so I apologize if saying that word like scared you or got your attention, but it's really not at all that other nasty N word. Anyway, so this is her finishing up her story. The wife of Bath steps in and says, and so they lived happily ever after because the knight learned his lesson and gave his wife the sovereignty. And because he gave her the power, he therefore got the best of both worlds, both fair and faithful. And now they live happily ever after. So, and then she just kind of throws in at the end her prayer for what she wants out of her next husband. And ultimately, the lesson is taught, the lesson is learned by the knight. And then the question is just, did the pardoner learn his lesson?